Hello everyone. Today I'm going to talk about React Context. It is React native local state management system. It is a way to avoid passing data between components via props. This can be very cumbersome in certain cases. Context provides a way to share values between components without having to explicitly pass props through each level of the tree. It is very similar to Redux, Recoil, such global state management system, but it can also manage local state. Okay, let's look at a very simple example with a personal information display system. We have a happy young man with 18 years old. What happens then? I wish him happy birthday. He gets 1 year old. Happy birthday, 1 year old again. How to write this code? It's simple. At first, go to the app component, and here inside is the age info component, which shows the age and happy birthday button. So where is the data? The data is in the big app component. I created the age and set age with use state, and then wrote the add age function, and I passed the data from the app component to age info component through age info's props. Let's go to the age info. Here are two parameters, one is age and the other is add age, and we can call them directly with props.age and props.addAge. But what's the problem with this simple code? That is, if you want to pass a lot of data, for example, we extend the system into a dating app, then I may want to know more about this guy, such as height, income, and hobbies. If you pass the data in this way, there will be a lot of data to write here. It is a bigger problem in React if there are a lot of smaller components in the age info, because the components are like Russian dolls wrapped together. In React, you may have to pass data through several layers of these props. It will be very cumbersome. In this case, we can use the useContext to solve this problem. Let's look at this diagram. We use a pair of functions createContext and useContext. This createContext function can create a context object, and then in the context object, there is the provider component. It is like a local library. You can wrap the component, the provider, outside of the component you want to pass data to, like our age info. And then in that child component, you can use useContext to read the data in the library. In this way, we can pick things overhead. We don't have to pass data through props. Okay, let's look at the code. The first thing we need to do is create a library with createContext. And here we should give an initial value. And the createContext will return a context object. And we call it InfoContext. Since we will use it somewhere else, so we should export it. Then we should here define the initial value. It has two properties. So one is age. We set it to 0 for now. And the other is add age. It's a function. How the detailed implementation is not important, because we will initialize it in InfoContext again. And in InfoContext object, it has a sub-component called provider. you wrap the info context provider outside of the component which you want to pass the data. For example, here is the age info. And now in the info context provided prompt that need a value property should issue value here. And so one is age and the other is add age. From here use state and the function add age. Okay? Now we can access the data. Everything is correct. Remove the age and add age here and go into age info and also delete the 2. And here we can begin to access the data with useContext. And here we should give it info context and tell it which library we will use. And of course, let's take a look what it will return. It returns the 2 values, one is age and the other is add age. Correct. Now we can call the data directly. So that's fine. Everything works. Our code suddenly became clean and understandable. Next, let's do an exercise to see how easy it is to use context to pass data. What if I want to display the guy's deposit here and give him some money? How can I do it? The component we will do will be very similar like the age info. So we can here create a file called savinginfo.tsx. And here we create the component, savinginfo component. And then just copy the data from age info directly to savinginfo. And change the text to here saving. And here also remove the onClick. And here happy birthday change to add saving or whatever you like. And go to app info and import the saving info. Now it should be fine. And next, we can initialize our data. In the initial value, we just tell the initial value the type, saving 0, and add saving, which is a function. How it really implemented is not important. Then let's go to the app component and use state to create the saving and add saving. Here, I should think about how much I should give him really. And €1,000, he should be fine. And now we can write the add saving function. Set saving. Previous state is to previous state plus 1,000. And now you can, in the info context provider, give the saving and add saving. Okay, now let's go into saving info. Now we can use the useContext hook to call the data directly. useContext, and here we should tell it info context. And it return an object which contains all the data what we want. Saving and add saving. Now we can call the data directly. And also here onClick is equal to add saving. Now let's take a look. Add saving, correct. Add age, correct. Now we have finished the basic usage of context and useContext. So next, it's the time for the most exciting moment for programmers. Cleaning up the code. Let's look at the diagram again. The createContext returns a context provider, which is a data library. You can use it to wrap outside of the component you want to pass the data to. So it will be better extract the context provider to a separate file so that you can use it somewhere else. Let's see how to do it in the code. Go to the app component. We will find out the initial value and the createContext and all the initial value data stuff, and also the info context provider. Won't change in the future, and this part will stay in the app component because you will change it very often in the future. How can we separate the info context provider? Let's go to create a new file called mycontextprovider.tsx, and here create a new component called myContextProvider. Here, just copy the initial value and create a context into here. And let's import the dependency of createContext. And then cut this part also to my context provider. And we put it in this component. And also here, we should cut it to this my component provider. Okay, this jacket is nearly finished. We still need one thing, that is children, and it is the React node. We put it here to tell where to show the children component. So this higher order component finished. It can be very easy to reuse. Let's go back to the app component, and we just simply call the myContextProvider, and we wrap it outside of the code we want to pass the data. Okay, that's finished. But on the right side, it complains again. It cannot find the info context. Why? It's simple because we just remove the info context to a new file. Let's go to the age info, change the new file address. And we do the same thing in the saving info, change it to the new address. Okay, Now let's try it again. Correct. Do you see our code in app are more cleaner and less? Now go to age info. Maybe you will see useContext and info context is very cumbersome to use. Every time we have to import two of them. So actually we can also shorten this code. Let's go to my context provider and find the create context. And after it, we can create a hook called useInfoContext, and it is a function. Simply return the code we just copied and import the dependency of useContext. So now we can use this hook in this age info. Go to the saving info and do the same thing. Use info context. You see, this frees up some memory of our brain again. Let's check the result. Correct. But the context has a small problem, that is the render. Let's go to the My Context provider, take a look. Changing any of the 4 values in the provider will cause its child components to render. This is not a big problem for small apps, but for big and large apps, it will seriously affect performance. How can we solve this problem? The basic method is to separate my context provider into 2 components. One wrap outside the age info and the other wrap outside the saving info, so they won't mix together. However, this method will create a lot of code, and sometimes you won't want to put the data in different places, because the data very often has a logical connection. What shall we do in this case? I found a very useful third-party React library called ReactTract, which tracks the context value and renders only the component that the value changes. I will explain this library in the next video. Okay, this is all for this video. Thanks very much for watching, and see you next time.